More than 64% of murder victims in Missouri in 2018 were black. More than 68% of the arrests were blacks. St. Louis is the majority of the problem. Why do you think that is? In Philly in 2016, 78.3% of the murder victims were black. And more than 90% of the victims were male. 43.6% of Philly is black. This means there are a lot of black male murder victims in Philly. Surprised? 80.3% of those arrested in shootings in Philly, whether the shooting was fatal or not, were black. Lots of young black men killing or attempting to kill other young black men in the city of brotherly love. In Philly, 2014 and 2015, more than 78% of the criminal homicide victims were black. Again, most of the victims were male. Over 3/4 of known homicide offenders in Philly were black. Most of the offenders were male and by far, and over 3/4 of them were 34 years of age or younger. More than 75% of the victims were also 34 years of age or younger. More than 53% of all homicide victims in Philly, this is the gangland thing, this is why it's gangland, most of it, more than 53% of all homicide victims in Philly had 4 or more previous arrests. In 2018 in PA, murder victims were predominantly male, accounting for 77.5% of the total. Victim analysis by race reveals that 39.9% were white, 60.1% were non-white. The largest number of victims were in the 25 to 29 range, accounting for 17.4% of the total. There were 535 arrests in 2018 for murder offenses in Pennsylvania. This is a 15.8% increase from the 462 arrests the previous year. Persons arrested for murder offenses in 2018 in Pennsylvania were predominantly male, 90.7%, predominantly black, 63.6%, and 25 years of age and older, 58.5%. Black Lives Matter. In 2017 in PA, again, same thing, like putting underwear on in the morning. Murder victims were predominantly male, accounting for 81.4% of the total. Victim analysis by race reveals that 37% of the victims were white, 63% were non-white. The largest number of victims were in the 20 to 24 age range, accounting for 20.5% of the total. There were 461 arrests in 2017 for murder offenses. Persons arrested for murder offenses in 2017 in PA were predominantly male, 80.87%, black, 60.3%, and 25 years of age and older, 59.4%. Keep in mind, Pennsylvania is only 12% black, according to 2010 census data. In 2020, of the 192 people arrested for murder in Arkansas, murder/criminal homicide, 128, or 2/3 of them, were black. In 2020, 8 of the 9 arrestees for criminal homicide in Little Rock were black. In 2019, of the 165 people arrested in Arkansas for murder, 113, or 68.48% of them, were black in a state where only 15.7% of the residents are black, according to 2010 census data. But Black Lives Matter. In 2018, of the 155 persons arrested for murder in Arkansas, 105, or over 2/3 of them, were black. In Little Rock, 2018, 24 of the 29 arrestees, or 82.75% of them, for criminal homicide were black. Of the 31 arrests made for criminal homicide in North Little Rock for 2017, 2018, and 2020, the 2019 document wasn't working. Of those 3 years, 29 of the 31 arrests for criminal homicide in North Little Rock, were black. That's 93.5% of them. You could do this all day and night for states that have detailed data. Crumbling inner cities run by Democrats tend to have lots of black on black homicide. In 2017 and 2018, 80% of the murder victims in Chicago were black. Over 73% of the arrests in 2017 and 2018 in Chicago for homicide were black. In Illinois, state where 14.6% of the residents are black, according to 2010 census data. In 2019 of all murders where the race of the offender was known, 66.5% of the murder offenders were black, And I'd wager most of that was Cook County. 155 of those victims were 19 years of age or younger. For African American less than 30, murder is a common cause of death, especially in Cook County, Illinois. About 57% of the murder victims were age 30 or younger, as well as murder offenders. So a lot of young black men killing young black men in Illinois. From 2010 to 2019 in California, 26.34% of the murder arrestees were black. Surprised? 46.7% were Hispanic, 20.06% were white, and 6.89% were other. Why are Asians doing so much? Why are Asians not murdering each other in the hood? From 2010 to 2019 in California, 28.55% of the murder victims were black, 43.4% were Hispanic, 20.32% were white, and 7.3% were other. Plenty of black-on-black homicide happening in California. California is, according to 2010 census data, only 6.5% African American / black. In Washington, D.C., African Americans / black, depending on which term you use, some people don't like one or the other. In Washington, D.C., blacks typically comprise more than 90% of all murder victims. Black-on-black homicide has been very commonplace in D.C. for a long time. Does that surprise you? But Black Lives Matter, right? In Virginia in 2020, of the 344 arrestees for homicide, 220 or 63.95% of them were black. Of the 528 homicide victims, 350 or 66.28% of them were black. Lots of black-on-black homicide in Virginia. In Virginia in 2019, of the 428 murders, 253 or 59.11% of the victims were African American. 89 of the victims were less than 25 years old. Of the offenders, 280 or 65.42% of them, almost two-thirds, were black. In 2018 in Virginia, there were 391 murders, and 236 or 60.35% of them were African American / black. Those are the victims. 60% of the victims. 92 of the victims were less than 25 years old. 241 or 61.63% of the offenders were black. Black Lives Matter. Do those Black Lives Matter, or is it white privilege causing blacks to kill blacks in Virginia? Asians are not slaughtering Asians in Virginia, and it's probably because they have two parents in the household. They're not doing drugs, and they go home and do their homework. Daddy's there. Yet less than 20% of Virginia's residents are black. Then we get to Ohio, and I got tons of data, but I'll give you, here's the rub. Here it is in real short order. A murder report in Ohio covering 2000 to 2012 tells us this. This is 2000 to 2012. 64% of murder offenders in Ohio were black, and 60% of the murder victims were black. From 2000 to 2012. Most of that's Cleveland and Dayton, if you've been following the data as I have. Less than 14% of Ohio's population, according to the 2010 census, was black. So that gives you a little idea how bad it is. In 2020 in Wisconsin, of the 204 statewide arrests for criminal homicide, 113 or 55.39% of the arrestees were black. In 2019, of the 179 arrestees for criminal homicide in Wisconsin, 81 or 45.25% were black. In 2018, of the 169 arrestees for criminal homicide in Wisconsin, 88 or 52.07% were black. Most of that is because of Milwaukee. Less than 7% of Wisconsin, according to the 2010 census, is black. More than 87% of the people shot in Buffalo, New York, in 2020, more than 87% of those shot in 2020 there were black, according to news reports. In 2018 in Georgia, arrest data indicates that of the 398 people booked, arrested for murder, 302 or 75.87% were non-white. The only categorizations are white and non-white. In 2017, of the 474 arrests for murder in Georgia, 372 or 78.48% were non-white. So I could do this all day. There's just a sampling. See the link underneath the video for all the data. I could add a lot more and probably will at some point because that article's not finished. But when I figured while I'm digging through homicide data, I might as well look at that. Why is it in Wisconsin and especially Milwaukee, Chicago, and Illinois and especially Chicago, Washington, D.C., Georgia, and especially Atlanta / Fulton County, why is it in St. Louis City? Why is it in Pennsylvania? Why is it in Philadelphia? And especially inner cities that have been crumbling for decades. Why is there all the black-on-black homicide in cities that Democrats have been running to the ground for decades? Because I sit here, I could write a book on this. People have. Why is it that way in California? Why is it that way in Virginia? And there's several cities in Virginia that are melting down. If you want to look at them individually, where that's the main problem. There's a handful. It's like 6 or 7 of them. It's getting real bad. Why is it? Why is it black-on-black homicide in all those cities? Everywhere you go, it's like putting underwear on. Black lives matter, though, right? But who do they matter to? Apparently, they don't matter to a lot of the residents of that area. The biggest threat to a young black male in America is not the police and not white militia members, but it's another young black male, especially if they're both gangbangers. The black community needs to wake up, and people need to call them out and say, you need more daddies in the homes. Stick around, fathers. Plan your families. Don't be MIA, because then if you're MIA, your kid's has a bigger chance of starting to do drugs, dropping out of high school, and it just snowballs for there. Most of these criminal homicide arrestees, most of them didn't finish high school. But Black Lives Matter. Again, see the links underneath the video. And I'll mention again, kids, from 2004 to 2018, there were 39,144 black-on-black single offender homicides, 42,200 white-on-white single offender homicides, considering whites are about 4.5 times the population. You do the math. Even I think even Dave could figure that one out, and he's an idiot. That works out to over 7.1 black-on-black homicides per day. So again, the biggest threat to young black men is not the police, and not white militia members, and not white guys with lots of guns living out in the middle of nowhere like me. It's other young black men. Have a nice day, and don't thank me now for the sobering information.